Torres holding his Chelsea place in the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
Hello and welcome to the V2 Football Podcast. I'm Chris Lappin and I'm delighted to be joined on the line by professional soccer coach and author Gerard Jones. How are you doing this morning, Gerard?
Very good always.
Yeah, so if anyone doesn't know Gerard does, he's a former director of coaching at Arsenal Soccer Schools and has recently left a post at Rochdale. He's joined us to discuss his book, Let's Talk Soccer, using game calls to develop communication and decision making in football. A bit of a mouthful. So before we go on about your book, I thought we'd just have a quick discussion about how you got into coaching.
Well, I've always been involved in football since a lad, obviously playing for grassroots teams, and then eventually I got lucky where I signed for Halifax Town when they were a professional football club back in the conference.
Yeah.
That was around sort of 2006, 2008 time. And during that time I played for the youth team, went on to play and train at various other clubs on trial. Didn't quite work out. Left Halifax Town in the summer of 2008, having done a few years coaching anyway, going into schools. This is from the age of sort of 15, 16, 17, 18, going into schools, doing community type courses. I remember even as a YT player driving to Sheffield, getting the train to Sheffield, watching Sheffield Wednesday, how they coach, watching the youth team manager at the time. Various things like that. Making notes of what people did when they were in the session, because I always had a fascination with coaching. And then eventually, having stopped playing, realised that obviously I was never going to make it as a player, but I've always had a passion for coaching. I love coaching. I've started to really pursue that. Got my level 1 around sort of 18, 19 years old. Just went on from there. The real big spark was working at Hull Uni when I was a student at Hull. Started coaching the university ladies team. That taught me a lot. Working for the local FA, and then eventually I set up my own business, and that's where everything boomed. Football coaching business.
Yeah.
Eventually grew into the biggest provider in Hull and East Yorkshire, and that was the really start of everything. That's when I started doing my level 2, passed my level 2, started to run my own development centres. That's when I got in touch with, got linked in with Arsenal. The rest is history from there.
Yeah. I read that you're currently doing your FA FIFA A licence. Could you just quickly take me through what's the process of getting the licence?
Yeah, the UEFA A obviously is the highest practical coaching award you can do. The other one after that is obviously the Pro licence, which is something that's spent over, I believe it's over 18 months or so, and it's more for managers who work in the top levels.
Yeah.
A licence is something that's run over a period of years. The best course that I've gone on, and I say it to everyone, is the A licence for youth, the FA Advanced Youth Award. For me, that's the best course going at the minute as well.
What made you decide to write the book?
Literally just to at first it was to put my ideas to paper. I think that's a massive part. Anyone listening to this, I say it all the time, if you're coaching, you really need to start making notes on what it is that you believe in. What is your gaming style? How do you think kids or senior players should be taught? How do you see them? Do you see them as learners? Do you see them as people that you want to be creative? And if so, what type of practices are you going to have to create in order to develop independent thinking footballers?
Yeah.
And originally it started off as putting my own ideas to work. It was built from my master's degree, my thesis, which I did at Stirling University. Eventually it evolved into a book, and it was something that I was proud of because I just wanted to share my ideas with people on what's worked for me over the last 10 years.
And who is the book focused towards? Is it young coaches or professional coaches?
Everyone. Absolutely. Everyone, yeah. Within the actual book, there's a massive part about how to program your work, whether you're working with a 5 to 11 year old, 12 to 16, 17 to 21, or over 21, 25 plus. There's certain words that you might use with certain people based on their cognitive development at that time, where their brains are. Obviously, the prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until around mid-20s anyway. Some it might be earlier, some might be later, but around on average. And that's the bit at the front of the brain what controls a lot of our decision making, emotional control, anticipation, etc. So it's more about recognising what words do you use with certain ages that's appropriate to them. And it's for anyone, because the biggest thing is communication, the detail that we're giving the players. And not just what we're giving, what they're giving each other, and also how that relates to the way we want them to play.
So you've had experience of working in grassroots all the way through to the professional game at all ages. Do you find communication between coaches and players a big problem?
I think it's a massive problem, and simply because I think we offer them too much. We're battering the kids with information. Typically, over the last God knows how many years, we've been hitting the kids, with information. It's how much they take on board, probably very little. We use a lot of jargon, a lot of fancy buzzwords, what we might have seen somebody else use, or it sounds good. And how much of that actually relates to them? How much of that relates to how they learn, their preferred learning? Do they want to be told, or do they want to be shown? Do they want to see it? And does it relate to how you want them to play? And I think the biggest issue we've got is kids in the country don't talk on the pitch at a young age, and certainly at some levels higher up. And the other thing is that we're now starting to get better, but typically we've hit them with too much. What we need to start seeing now is, can we be a bit clearer in what we're saying, and also can it be less?
Yeah.
Less but more, if you like.
So you've worked with players in the States, Europe, Africa. What's the major difference in styles you found in teaching the youngsters?
It's a good question. They all want to learn. Every one of them wants to learn. There's no differences in terms of kids are kids. Players are just bigger kids, senior players are just bigger kids, and they all love the game. And if you probably gave them a choice, we're going to play a game, or a tournament, or a game-like session, or we're going to do a passing drill, you're not going to have much practice, it's going to be boring, it's going to be repetitive. Choice which one they would choose, I think they're always going to choose the game, or the game-like thing. I think the differences have been where, from my experience in Italy, for example, the kids out there, the Italian boys who I coached, they were quite happy to do a lot of the drill type stuff, even though if you gave them a choice they'd have probably done the game.
Yeah.
They literally, I saw Lazio coaches, various other top coaches, drilling the kids for 2 hours, doing passing drills, dribbling drills. And the kids were just wanting to learn, they wanted to practice the technique. In England, I don't know if you'd get away with that. I know we've tried it, but I think the kids would literally say, look, I'm bored when we play the game. Certainly at grassroots level. I think there's sort of some of the differences. I think sometimes, maybe culturally abroad, a bit more inclined to listen and show a bit more respect, whereas over here, challenging more, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. The biggest thing, we've got to give them games. Looking at all the teams that I've worked all over the place, they all learn more by playing in a game type scenario.
Would you say it's fair to say that we focus too much on results at youth level in this country?
I think it's something that will always be focused on, if I'm on it. Simply because everyone says it's about development, especially when they're younger. Winning can come later when they're older. But the first question, I put this in my book, what's the first question do you think people ask when there's a game? What do you reckon it is?
Did you win?
Yeah, did you win? What was the score? That's the first question anybody asks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not what did you earn? Did you achieve what you wanted to? What was your academy? For example, I worked at Rochdale Academy for several years. We give the players, and it's part of the E.P.P. now in England, we give the players learning objectives, and everyone will have a learning objective throughout the week in training, especially on a game day. The parents know this. So if I was a parent, it might be, what was your objective? And the kid might say, recognising when to dribble, when to pass, or it could be anything. Did you achieve it? What do you think you could have done better? No, that ain't what's happened. The conversations, whether it's the coach, academy manager ringing the coach, everything. I've been in other clubs and I've seen it at all ages, big clubs, small clubs. The first thing on everyone's lips is what is the score? And I think what the problem is, for example, I've been in situations where we've won games and nobody bats an eyelid. But as soon as you lose a game, and this is at all organisations that I've worked for, there's something wrong. What's happening? Is the coach giving them the right information? Are the players good enough? Why did you lose? And all of a sudden they think it's an issue. What they don't realise is that we might have lost because we're playing so-and-so in a different position. We were winning in the first few quarters of the game. Now we're losing and we lost because we changed the style. It was becoming too comfortable, so we wanted to test the players, wanted to give the centre-halves more opportunities to recognise when to press, when to drop, when to head. So, if you're a developmental coach, you're going to do things like that. It might look messy at first, but, if you're a performance coach, you're going to be, right, you're a number 7, you're an 11, the best players play, subs don't get on, and that's a grassroots or professional. And I think, to answer your question, I think, even though people say, we're not about that, their actions are speaking that they actually are. And I don't know if we'll ever fully get away from that, if I'm honest, because it's competitive nature, isn't it? You go out, in a lot of people's eyes, to win. If you're asking me what my personal opinion is, I think it should be about competition, because competition is healthy. In life, I think it is. I think we should encourage it. I do believe with the younger age groups, if they're getting beat, it's not an issue. Not an issue at all. It's how they got beat. Why did they get beat? Are people getting better for it? If not, then we might have to change something. But really, what are the situations that we're creating for them? What's the learning environment? And I think the winning bit really is when I managed at first team level as a semi-pro coach. So if I wasn't winning games, I got judged, and rightly so. Because at that level, you expect him to learn, but you want him to put it into practice. You want to get 3 points on the table. Whereas with kids, it should never be about 3 points.
Do you think that long ball is still an inherent trait of the younger groups? You usually put the biggest, best player up front. And...
Yeah. Well, that's grassroots, isn't it? I mean, you do see it a little bit at academies. You might go to some academies, your lower league clubs, and you might see... I mean, at Rochdale, we would play certain clubs. I won't say who, because I might get this told off. But, Rochdale, our philosophy was possession-based. So we always wanted to keep the ball. Sometimes we play against some clubs that said they were possession-based, but actually they weren't. Because the reasons what you said there. And I think it's just something that you got to remember. There was a document that came out, and a lot of people perhaps misinterpreted that document. It's written by Charles Hughes.
Yeah.
Time ago, he used to be head of everything, head of coaching at the FA. And he came out with a statistic that the top teams, when they score, they do it in 3 passes or less.
Yeah.
Because he was in charge of coach education, what a lot of the coaches did, who are now the great coaches, if you like, or the old guard, right, that must mean we've got to get it in the box as quickly as possible. And they probably took it to the extreme, and I think that's probably why we're behind sort of 10, 15, 20 years from everyone else because of that. And I think it's so ingrained in our culture that it's hard to get out. Hopefully with the New England DNA, we'll get out of it in the next 10, 20 years. It's going to take time.
A large number of junior sides are run by dads with no or little coaching qualifications, and they probably don't have any intention of getting coaching badges because they're so expensive. The standard of coaching come up if they just made the badges cheaper? Or...
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I really don't know the answer. I think they are possibly too expensive, getting more expensive.
Yeah, so I bet they're a lot more expensive than they are compared to Spain and Germany.
Yeah, they are. You're right. You're right. I think it's something that's an issue because I can comment on certain things because I started off as an FA level 1.
Yeah.
I did level 1, level 2, UEFA B, now I'm doing the UEFA A. I did module 1, module 2, module 3, youth award assessment, now I'm doing the advanced youth. So I've done a lot. And I think over the years I've probably thought that. I think I've got away with it because I started coaching really early. And I'm lucky now that I'm 25. I know I might look 35, but I'm 25. And I think if you're married with kids and you're a dad and you're a grassroots coach and responsibilities and you wanted to get into coach, you wanted to help your team out because your son plays or whatever, I think it's difficult for them guys because, they can't really get time off work. They can't really justify why they're spending 5 odd grand on a UEFA rate. Or whatever it is. It's just stupid little things. I think the only way they can do it, the coach education is getting better. I just think, possibly prices, maybe bring them down. Perhaps do something where you don't have to pay it all in one go. You can maybe block it, block it payments. No, but I do think it needs to be looked at. It's a good question what you ask.
Okay, recently the FA promised to plough money into the grassroots game. Have you seen an improvement in the last 2 years?
I think you see slight improvements. I know the FA got a lot of stick. I think you do see slight improvements, if I'm honest. But the game is that big and that wide, and obviously England being as big as it is, I think it's difficult because there's still a lot of facilities that are poor. The facilities need to get improved, playing surfaces, sometimes you question funding for coaches and all sorts of other things. Grassroots changing rooms. I was at Ecclesfield United and the changing rooms there were a nightmare.
Yeah.
They need some investment, And I think what would probably be better, you might agree, is, the Premier League's a multi-billion pound turnover company. I think they could perhaps spend a few more quid in investing in the game. Because I think they'll probably have more money than the FA.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably down to the Premier League, the Football League and the FA to pull their heads together and spend a few more out of the profit, to try and invest it, because hopefully, in their theory, it should be, if there's better grassroots facilities or better grassroots experiences, that'll hopefully produce more players, which will then make the team.
One last question. The under-21s play this summer. How do you think the young Lions will do?
They'll do alright, because there's a lot of good players in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good talented players in there. And I think they're a good setup with the DNA and obviously Gareth Southgate doing what he's doing.
And where can people find a copy of Let's Talk Soccer?
Let's Talk Soccer, you can find it on Amazon.
Yeah.
So you go on Amazon, whether it's amazon.co.uk or .com, you can get a paperback copy which is in England £9.99, Kindle version is £6.99, and you can also find it on the iBook store. And it's doing really well. I mean, one of the best sort of reviews we've had was from Bartlett, who's a senior FA youth coach educator, and he's put a really good review on there. And I think it's something that will really help a lot of grassroots coaches.
And before we go, do you want to plug your coaching website and any social media you have?
Oh yes, it's always good to get a cheeky plug in. I mean, literally, to find out a bit more about me and what I've done, and also if you needed any help, the biggest thing for me is we're all in it together, so to help people out. My website is www.gerardschooloffootball.com. Obviously, you can find me on Twitter at Gerard_Jones, Jones, and follow me on there, Facebook, etc. So, and make sure that you have a look at the book, because it'll certainly help with what people are doing.
I'll include all the links with the description at the bottom of this interview.
Top man.
So I've really enjoyed speaking to you today. I'd love you to come back on the show again in the future.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it's a good chat, and also if there's anything that I can do, especially talking in depth, giving an insight into academies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be lucky. I'm going abroad this August, etc. I'm going to be going out to A.F.C. Milan.
Yeah.
So perhaps if you wanted to do anything more, I can help on that. Give an insight into some of the top clubs.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so thanks for joining us.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.